I'm Justin Davis, and this is Runcam's RC. Hey guys, welcome back to the Runcam's channel. I'm Justin Davis, and check out what I have here on the bench today. We're going to talk about the new GEPRC MX3 Sparrow. Check this out. It's a little tiny 139mm frame by GEPRC, and if you're new to my channel, you might not know it, but I'm a huge fan of GEPRC. So they have some pretty cool frames. I've really had a lot of fun with theirs in the past couple of years, and they're kind of an economically priced frame that you can get and build up from scratch and make them run however you want. But this one comes with a really nice little micro stack in the middle. You can run this little guy with an XT30 on the back from 2 to 4S. I tested it on 3 and 4S, and it was okay on 3S, but 4S is where this thing really shines. They put a little extra work into this package by making their box nice and colorful. I haven't seen a lot of boxes come out lately that has so much detail, and really nice printing on this box coming out of China. And I was impressed with the case. Now, SPC Maker, in the past, they started making some really nice cases. You also get some stickers in here from GEP. You can stick those on your radio or on your flight box. And you get another micro strap in here. So this is a little thinner than some of the big straps that go on the 200 class racers. And it also has a little detail in here. It says FPV Racing on the front, which is actually pretty cool. So this will be a nice box to keep this quad in. Now right behind here I have this little guy, and this was the Frsky 140. This is an X140, and I had a lot of fun. If you watched the review on this one, I got to fly this one around a bungee tower. I really wished at the time that I would have had the Sparrow, because this little guy would have absolutely ripped over top of that bungee tower. But this one is also a good bet, but I had an issue with this one. The back power cable broke off right off the ESCs, mainly because it wasn't zip tied down. So my recommendation, if you buy a Frsky X140, before you do your next flight, zip tie down the back end where your battery wire is, because it will break, slam off this ESC back here. Now also the camera on this one, it's actually a Runcam Micro clone, and I'll try to put a link down there below before you guys for this one. It's a little bit cheaper than the Runcam Micro, and I don't really see any difference between this camera and this camera, so I would try one of these out. But the GEPRC Sparrow impressed me right out of the box, because I was like, hey, this has everything on it that I'd want. It already has the bottom plate on here for the battery. It has nice large motors on here that are running 3-inch props, and right now I have the Racecraft props, but you get plenty of props with this box. Check out all the props that come with it. This is pretty awesome. You get a whole bag full of props. There's probably 4 or 5 sets of props. So let's go ahead and give you a little closer look at this little GEPRC Sparrow. It is a pretty sweet little quad. Now I put everything back in the box so you can see what it looks like when it comes to your door. Very, very nice box, but let's just go ahead and hop right into this review, and let's do this as honest as possible. I think the price is a little bit high, $250. I believe you could use a coupon on GearBest site to maybe chop the price down just a little bit, but it is expensive, but it does have a lot of stuff on here that make it expensive. So they put a lot of really nice gear on here, and that's one of the reasons they had a hard time getting the price down on this one. So maybe one con is that it is a little bit high priced, but way better than some of the other quads that I've seen come out lately. So I mean, everything from the box that I pulled out of the Chinese box that had been through the ringer in DHL to get here, and I was pretty impressed with this box, because normally we don't get all this flash before we even open up the box, but it includes everything you need in here. And this is a bind and fly quad, so all I had to do was bind it up with my Taranis X7 sitting over there, and inside the box you get the frame kit, which is already built. You don't have to do any building. You get the Micro Swift from Runcam in there, which is a great camera. That's usually my go-to camera. There's the HGLRC XJB F328, that's 28 amp F3 flight controller with 4-in-1 ESCs underneath, and above that is riding the TX20, which is a pretty nice little 200 milliwatt transmitter, so you can switch it from 200 to back to 25 milliwatt, which is super nice. Now you have 28 amps ESCs running 2 to 4S, like I was saying. They have BO Heli S on there, and XJB TX20, they labeled that twice on there. And one of the best things about this quad is the GEPRC labeled 1408 motors, 3500 kV, clockwise and counterclockwise. Kind of annoying to me that they have counterclockwise and clockwise motors because you just have to switch your ratchet around when you're going to take off the props. I like the Emax motors because most of those, they're not clockwise and counterclockwise, so I can just grab another motor and replace it if I have one go out. And you get 2 battery straps in here, and you get the Frsky XSR. It's the RSXR on here, so pretty sweet little receiver, and it's pretty much a full range receiver. Now the next thing I was impressed with was this case. Yeah, it's pretty nice. And just go ahead and open this up. I like the fact that it does say FPV Racing on the front. That makes me feel happy. You have pretty standard setup in here. This is not the best grade foam, but it does have extra slots you can pull out in here for maybe adding a couple batteries in here. You could probably put some batteries in this side, but they have the Runcam cable in here, and this just hooks up to the back of your Runcam Micro. Then you can go into the menus, and I have some reviews on this Runcam Micro Swift that you can check out to go into the full OSD settings on this camera. It's pretty nice. Now you also have a whole ton of props in here, and these props are okay. They're a little bit flexible for my taste. They're gonna fly a little bit soft. They might give you a little more vibrations. I like a nice stiff prop, like the Racecraft props. These are pretty stiff, right to the middle of the core, and then they're really sharp on the end. So you get a nice punch out, but a really nice quiet sounding prop. Now you also get some stickers in here, like I was showing you before. This is cool that you get those. I always like stickers, and this little thin strap. This is a little bit thinner than your standard strap. This looks like about a 1/2 inch there. And we'll talk about the quad. So here it is sitting on the bench next to the Frsky X140, and you can tell right away that this one is kind of hulky. It is beastly actually compared to the Frsky X140. Now this one flew super lightweight, and it has a really nice power to weight ratio. It is super light and easy to access inside this stack right here. 4 screws, takes off the top, and that's probably the best thing about this frame right here. It's also a stretch, which I like a lot. You can see it has sort of extended front and back on it. Now this one is pretty much a true X if you look at it from the very front right there, and the arms are a little bit wider, whereas these are sort of a narrow profile. However, I said this one was a beast. It is. It's running 1408s on here, and the Frsky X140 has 1306s, which I hit a wooden pole and damaged this one, so I've got to replace this motor. The bell is completely bent and the shaft is bent. I really did a number on that one, but I have some more 1306s laying around because they're a pretty standard size motor. However, this one has way more punch out than the X140, and if you come out of a huge maneuver, say you do a huge power loop and you come back around, you have plenty of punch to power back out of something, which this one kind of lacked for me. So I did kind of bounce into the ground a few times with this one. But getting used to the throttle on this one, I did the same thing. But after a few flight packs with this Sparrow, I was just really starting to feel it. And I noticed on the back of this one that they did zip tie down the XT30 connector going to the 4-in-1 ESC, which is really important. You need to have a little bit of something there holding this wire down, because if your battery flies off, the force of that 4S battery flying off, it's going to rip this tiny little cable, slam off your quad, and damage your 4-in-1 ESC. Possibly, you know, pull the metal plates where the wire solders down to off the ESC. So that wouldn't be good. And that's what happened to this one for me. So like I said, if you have one, zip tie your cable down on this one, you should be fine. Now enough about the X140. Let's go ahead and get close and personal with the Sparrow. Look at this profile from the side. This little aluminum frame is pretty tight. They also have markings on here for how much pitch and degrees you have for your camera. We'll just get that in a little closer. You can see it actually runs from like 10 degrees tilt at the very bottom point right there, all the way up to 50 degrees. So you can get tons of tilt. This camera is actually sitting a little higher than the stack itself. So some of the problems we've had with some of these micro frames, the 130s, the 120s, is that when you bend your Runcam Micro back to get some tilt, the back of this camera has such a large fixture right here for the wires that it was hitting the flight controller and whatever's sitting on top of the flight controller, sometimes the VTX or the receiver sitting there. So we had a problem with placement and space to get enough tilt, but GEPRC designed this frame so that this front end is sitting way higher than the stack. So they actually raised this whole thing up, and that's why it has this sort of funny shape on here. That really helps out your tilt and gives you kind of a maximum 50-degree tilt. When I first got it out of the box, it was actually as far up as it could go. Kind of crazy for me, but for freestyle that would be fine. If you're going to be racing, you can lower that down to about 20 degrees. Now on the GearBest website, they say that this is 70-75 aluminum, and it has a nice sort of gunmetal sheen finish over top of it, which looks pretty nice. Slopes down in the back to where you have your VTX antenna coming out, and you have two little poles on here already put with little rubber tops on them for your receiver, which is kind of sweet. You do have a full range receiver on this one. That's that RXSR on here from Frsky, so you won't have any problems with range. However, I felt like this was a little bit close to these two antennas back here for the receiver, so anytime you have your video signal coming right directly where your antennas are, sometimes you can have a bit of interference there, and I believe I was seeing some interference from this setup. So this antenna right here for the VTX is just actually slid down into a slot right here. This little piece of carbon that goes across. I would pull that out and maybe move this antenna up to this further higher part of the frame right here. Maybe zip tie it off right here so that it's not so close to these back antennas. It looks kind of nice and neat back there, but I think it's causing some interference. Now I told you guys before that this quad is a beast. It is definitely a beast. If you look on the GearBest website on the specs, and I'll put the link down below for this one, it says it does 170 kilometers per hour, and that's stupid fast. That's over 100 miles per hour. That's actually 105 miles per hour, and on 4S, I believe it. It is ridiculously fast. On my first punch out during my line of sight flight tests, before I started FPVing it, I flew it on 3S first, and it was okay. It was pretty good for beginners. So if you're a beginner, start out on 3S on this one and then move up to 4S later, and you'll notice a huge difference in power to weight ratio. And that's why I was saying this one can catch itself when you come around in big maneuvers. If it had a little bit larger props, it would probably be doing that a little bit better. You have a little bit better float, but this power system on here has no problem powering out of anything you throw at it. So you've got plenty of power with this, and 100 mile per hour quad on 139 millimeter frame is actually kind of crazy. Now what's giving us all of that extreme speed and power? Well, you're looking at it right here. It's the GEPRC Speed X motor. It's the GR1408, and these are 3500 kVs. They're a little larger than some of the other motors like the 1406s that people have been putting on these little 3-inch quad frames, but 1408, this is a really nice motor, and I knew they were going to be super punchy when I pulled them out of the box. I felt how notchy the magnets are in here. This is really, really, really nice magnets inside this motor. It feels like a more expensive type of motor to me. And in combination with the 3-inch racecraft props, this is just a great combo right here for maximum punch out and speed and some nice smooth control. Now I've had these HDLRC tower stacks in a lot of my other quads, and they do really nice. What's really cool about this one is that you can see on this side right here, the power cable actually comes all the way across right here and hooks on the side instead of right at the back. It just gives it a little extra length on here, and you're less likely to rip this off since it does come a little further, and it's also zip tied right here. You also have a beeper, and my beeper was just kind of hanging out there in the back, so I just secured it with a little bit of hot glue right there so that the prop doesn't tag it. So if you get one, make sure you put a little bit of hot glue there. It'll hold just inside the frame right there. But also nice that it comes with a beeper, because this little guy is kind of hard to see out in the grass. But let's talk about that TX20 up here. You've got 72 channels on here, which is kind of crazy. Some of those might be illegal bands for us to be flying on, but it also does have race band if you guys want to use race band for flying. Now it also switchable between 25, 100, and 250 milliwatt right here. If you long press this, you'll see 3 bars up here. 1 bar would be indicating 25 milliwatt, 2 bars would be indicating 100 milliwatt, and 3 bars would be indicating 250 milliwatt. So switchable between those 3 power outputs. Now, another nice detail about this quad is the fact that it has that all-in-one harness back there on the back of the Micro Swift. And this little cable right here, that is for your OSD editor. You just plug that in right there and go into your OSD, change around the brightness and contrast on your camera, and you can do pretty much anything inside your OSD. You can move things around on the screen with it, and that comes with that little joystick controller that's inside your box that came with your Sparrow. And also, guys, another great feature of this frame, this tower, and this is an amazing design, is the fact that this Runcam is completely recessed back here. So I'm notorious for hitting poles and solid objects, so this would be protected in there. I'm pretty sure my Runcam would be safe if I slammed straight into a pole. Now with my Frsky X140, you can see that one sticks out just a little bit. This one is completely recessed. So the only saving grace about this one is the fact that it has these arms that extend out so far in the front. I feel like that's what kept me from breaking this one. But this one took a full frontal impact straight into like an 8x8 piece of wood. So pretty durable little frame, and it saved the camera. And I didn't break an arm, which was kind of amazing. But this one is going to be probably even tougher. So my final thoughts on the GEPRC Sparrow, guys, is that this is definitely not a beginner quad. It is an absolute beast. If you want to buy something that's going to impress you, buy this one, because as soon as you fire it up on a 4S battery, you're going to be ripping around the field. You didn't have to build this thing. All you had to do was just bind it up to your radio, and you're going to be ripping right alongside anyone else who has a 3-inch quad. This winter, if you're doing any type of multi-GP indoor races, you're going to blast people out with this one. You can also, like I said, switch it back to 25 milliwatt for close proximity flying. But this one has a full range receiver on it, so that's super nice. You can do some big air flying out in the fields, doing some freestyle, or you can cut it back and do some multi-GP races with your friends. So I would say this is a good bet, and honestly, I really like this one a lot. There's not a lot I have to complain about on this quad. It is stupid fast, and all the components on here are top shelf. So I like HGLRC, thumbs up for that stack in here, and that TX20 inside here is a great video transmitter. So I think that's a win for me. I think it's 5 out of 5 stars for the GEPRC Sparrow. So let's go ahead out to the field, you guys. Let's put a 3S battery on this and a 4S battery. I'll do a line of sight test for you guys on this quad right off the grass, and then we'll do some FPV with this little guy, and I'll show you how awesome it does out in the big open field. All right, guys, let's go ahead and fly this little Sparrow, and let's fly it on 3S first, and then we'll switch over to a Tattu 4S battery. Super snappy. In acro mode only. Wow. Still a punch out. 1, 2, 3. Not too bad. Okay, I've got my 4S 450 milliamp. You could probably run an 850 on these just to be safe. It actually give you a little longer flight time. Here we go. It actually looks like the tune is holding. There's no kind of wobbling or anything. Let's go ahead and do a punch out while I got a full battery. 1, 2, 3. That's what I'm talking about. 4S is where it's at with these motors. And this power setup. Look at that. Super. And I actually dialed the rates back a little bit. They were set to 80, 80, and 75. So I thought that was plenty for such a small quad with big motors on it. So this is going to be a ripper on 4S. Freaking awesome. Let's go ahead and set this little guy down and do some FPV. Here we go.